We did pay the big, I think it was 250 grand bill to Customs Border Patrol, which just really sucks. Spend a couple hours on Alibaba or wherever trying to find another manufacturer, get some samples, allocate $500 in your budget. I don't care how big you are. It's like, you can afford $500. Send them your current product. Say, hey, this is what we pay. Can you make the same? And then just commit to in the next 6 months to make 10 or 20% of goods from a new place. And that was the best thing we could have done. I think there are a lot of wins on the P&L if you just spend a little bit of time asking. We launched a shipping threshold test. That one was very interesting. And I didn't realize how interesting it was until you called it out. And now I'm like, man, did we prematurely choose a winner?
All right, we're back with quarters and cents. Q2, I honestly, when I saw this coming up on the calendar, I couldn't believe that it has already been a quarter since the last time we were talking. It is wild, but a ton to talk about. So Ben, I'm going to avoid kind of like the in-depth intros. For anyone who wants to know a little bit more about Ben or I, check out Q1's episode where we go into a lot more detail on that. Today, I want to talk about the P&L. I want to get into the quarters and cents. So Ben, you ready to just jump in?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So let's start with the Q2 year over year. So I'm going to go through the P&L, and then Ben, maybe let's react with, we made some predictions last time, and let's see if some of these have actually been reflected in this new P&L. Did any of those bets we made actually expose themselves here? So net sales were plus 30% year over year. Gross margin plus 10%, but I think there's some nuance here that we'll get into. June was a bit strange with some tariff stuff, so we'll get into that. Gross profit at plus 35%. In terms of expenses, advertising and marketing up 15%, G&A down 10%. We got our interest at negative 69%. Now, someone who's here for the first time is going to look at this number and say, wow. We already talked about this in our Q1 episode. So if you want to know the story here, I recommend we'll link it in the show notes so that you can grab it. And then net income plus 160%. Now, if you're a returning listener, at the end of last episode, we talked about two other metrics that we wanted to be talking about. And that was our new customer cohorts, as well as profit per visitor. So Ben has graciously provided these as well. So we are up 5% in new customer cohort and up 5% in profit per visit. All right. So Ben, at the end of last quarter, we talked about a few things that were going to happen inside of Q2. I think the biggest ones that I would like to pull out are, we talked about this shifting of manufacturing from China to Ethiopia, and we were talking about tariff exposure. We were talking about big creative investments to be used in advertising, and we were also talking about margin maximizing tests. So any of those three that you're more passionate about than the others and you want to start with?
Well, I can do a executive summary on all three in about 10 seconds. Maybe let's call it 30 seconds. China to Ethiopia, best news. The nuance that you talk about where gross margin was down in June, honestly, that's going to carry through because of inventory we had received from China beforehand. Now we're just selling it. So now we're seeing the effects. I mean, we did pay the big, I think it was 250 grand bill to Customs Border Patrol, which just really sucks. Literally we're talking quarters and cents. So sucked a lot of quarters and cents out of the business that we hadn't forecasted. So we're now seeing the effects in the P&L. But the shift to Ethiopia, really fantastic. And Raindrop, trying to make that thing work. I think I said on the last podcast that we need to, attributable revenue has to be like 750 grand on that video to break even, fully baked after taking gross margin and contribution profit. We're not there yet. We actually went with Raindrop's recommended agency for YouTube and Google to really give that asset life. So we're going all in, putting all the chips on the table for Raindrop, where they're like, hey, this is the same agency that managed X, Y, and Z, the who's who of D2C customers for YouTube. So we're doing that. So answer is we have not made money on it yet, but hoping to. And then the third thing was testing, price testing. Is that what you said?
Yeah, all those margin maximizing tests. So we had like the price testing and the free shipping threshold, I think were the two big ones we talked about last time.
Yeah. In 10 seconds, check mark, like very good results. That's the executive summary. And we can dive in whichever direction you want on those.
All right, let's ignore the raindrop one and the creative. Maybe we can come back to that next quarter once we've kind of like seen everything from it. I'd love to talk about the tariff side. I'd love to talk about the testing side before we go into kind of like, hey, some observations from the new quarter's P&L. So the tariff one, I think last time we were talking about this, like, hey, we have 90 days. Who knows what's going to happen? Here we are pretty well 90 days later. And I think there's just as much uncertainty about this as there was 90 days ago. Nothing has really changed. It's interesting when you talked about like, hey, I finally had to pay that bill. I think there's a lot of brands that are probably listening to this in a similar situation where it's like, I knew this was coming and now I've actually felt the hurt. Let's talk about that a bit. So like, hey, you had to pay this $250,000 bill to bring that shipment in. I'm sure other people are feeling that inflated cost right now as well. Is there anything from like actually paying that? Like, have you changed anything about how you're selling that product or what you're doing? Or is it just kind of like same old, we're going to weather this?
Kind of the same old, we're going to weather this. Again, I think it's a completely different story if 60% of goods hadn't been shifted to Ethiopia already. Like if a number of brands here in Utah are almost exclusively out of China, if I'm in their shoes, like, honestly, I probably push this podcast out of existential fear. Because like, or if not existential fear, existential uncertainty. Because I think that's the tough part. It's like, who knows, tomorrow President Xi and President Trump could shake hands and it's duty free, or it could go to 600%. And I think that's what's crazy. So honestly, I think because we already hedged our bets and moved stuff to Ethiopia, it's about as calm as I could be in an uncertain manufacturing environment, other than making it in the US. So I think it's pretty much same old. We talked about price optimization on the D2C side, which we'll get into later, but like wholesale, we started charging customers a couple more bucks. So something similar, but beyond that, just same old, trying to be more efficient across the business. But most of that stuff we talked about last year. Last year was the toughest lift I think that we'll ever have. And I know you always say that. I'm not saying there won't be hard issues before, but we were like fundamentally broken in every way. Like the business was surviving in spite of us. And that's not like hyperbole. Like it's a fact. We were like a dead business walking and still growing somehow. It's like, okay, we gutted everything. We changed everything. We changed 3PLs. We changed banks, which I know is that interest number. So it's like this time last year was the worst time of my life professionally. So all of that to be said, I think we did all the hard stuff last year. And now it's like, hey, we'll just weather whatever storm comes.
I think it's like, in comparison, this doesn't feel as crazy as like things that have happened in the past. And I think like something that I find myself saying all the time is like the only certainty in our industry is uncertainty. Like the volatility just moves into different areas. Like today it's tariffs, tomorrow it's something else. It's shipping container shortages. It's like any number of things. So one thing you said in there, like, hey, we had already hedged for this. Have you, like, since the last time we spoke, have you actually moved like even more of the manufacturing out of China to Ethiopia? Do you mind just giving like, hey, if there's someone listening who's like, yeah, I'm kind of diversified, but maybe I need to move things more. Like, I think that's an easier play than like, oh, I'm 100%. And now I need to like completely find a new manufacturer is a daunting task. But maybe quick summary of like moving that over. What was that like? Any pains? Simple? How'd it go?
Yeah, really good call out. I'll say, looking at it now and then working our way backward in time, what we're doing tactically now, yes, we are shifting more to Ethiopia. They can't take everything because of MOQs. they're a little bit higher. Again, China's just so dialed in for everybody.
Yep.
And I don't care what US consumers say. It's like, honestly, they're the best. But so that was a little prohibitive, but we started to move other like more adjacent lines. So like youth shirts, trying to move flight over there, our airline pilot business.
Yeah.
So just slowly, to your point, rather than like, hey, let's move everything. But we're trying to sneak out a couple more containers before this 90-day moratorium ends with China for Black Friday. Because like, hey, we need stuff that Ethiopia can't make for Black Friday. So we're trying to sneak a couple more things out from China. But what we're also doing, I would be surprised if most people who are listening that manufacture in China, if their manufacturer doesn't have a factory they own or contract in Cambodia or Vietnam. They're smart.
Interesting.
I think they're about the most shrewd business people on planet Earth. And, I think they saw the writing on the wall, or at least our manufacturer did years ago. I mean, there was so much anti-Chinese rhetoric coming from at least the U.S.
Stateside,
Yeah. And so, I mean, they've got a factory in Cambodia that we're actually moving stuff over to. So in terms of like tactically, I would ask, if I were in China right now, I'd ask that same manufacturer with whom I've developed a great relationship, hey, do you have a factory or some outlet that we can make stuff in Cambodia, Vietnam? Some do Bangladesh. We opted not to do that. And it's the same factory. Again, there might be a little bit of drop off, but the samples we saw, it's like, oh, they migrated, or, they moved over factory like managers over to Cambodia to stand this thing up 2 years ago. And so it's basically Chinese made, but made in Cambodia. So that's tactically, I imagine by 26 Q1, we might have nothing in China. Again, if a trade agreement's there, we can move everything back, but we might be 70% Ethiopia, 30% Cambodia, and Cambodia will be all net new. So that's tactically what I'd recommend. And personally, answering your question, sorry for the diatribe.
No, that was great.
About how the transition was when we first did it. Yeah, it's tough and it's a leap of faith. And it's like, man, it's really nice. I'm dealing, let's call our manufacturer Alex. And it's like, hey, Alex Manufacturing Co. I've been working with them for 5 years. It's comfortable. I just hop on WhatsApp or email with them. I've been dealing with the same guy or woman for 5 years. But you always hear diversify. It's like, hey, just spend a couple hours on Alibaba or wherever trying to find another manufacturer, get some samples, allocate $500 in your budget. I don't care how big you are. It's like, you can afford $500. Send them your current product. Say, hey, this is what we pay. Can you make the same? And then just commit to in the next 6 months to make 10 or 20% of goods from a new place. And that was the best thing we could have done.
I love that. Just find even if it's just one other place, like you have now de-risked, you've de-risked substantially by doing that. And I love the advice you were talking about, because what in my head, I was like, oh, like Ben's already somewhat in Ethiopia versus China. So hey, it's easy to be like, let's pick some up from here and put it over here. But even if you are 100% exposed in China right now, just having that conversation of hey, is there other options here? Because if you have if you have a great relationship, you can do this. If you don't have a great relationship, then you probably are not going to be like, oh yeah, can you just move this somewhere else? It might bite you in the ass. But hey, if you have a great relationship, is there somewhere else? Or hey, can you introduce me to someone else in your network? Because it's so interconnected, and all you have to do is ask.
Yeah, that's my biggest advice. Where it's we didn't ask for the first 5 years. We never asked for price breaks. We never asked for, hey, floor load this thing so it can fit more units inside of a container. They'll do it if you ask, because again, there's aligned incentives. If we ask and that helps our business, we will give you, Alex Manufacturing Co., more money.
Yep.
And it's hey, if you ask for an intro to someone in Vietnam, to your point, it's let's be real. It's interconnected. If they don't own the factory, they'll probably get a cut 10% for not even making the goods just by doing the intro. So just ask.
I love this advice just because, like, again, one of the purposes of this podcast is like, hey, let's not just talk about like, hey, ways to spend money and like the sexy advertising stuff. It's like, hey, some of these foundational things and like just some of those questions you mentioned right there, like those are ways to make significant dollars with minimal effort. It's not sexy, but it's effective.
It's not sexy. And I also think it's not like, I don't know how to word this without sounding crass. It's I don't think it's like horrible business. Like Ben Yahalem from True Classic. I know a lot of times like, man, that guy is optimizing everyone, every partner. And it's also why they're 20 times bigger than we are. It's like, you know what? But it's like, I don't think it comes across, and I say that out of respect. Like it doesn't come across as, oh, we're trying to just optimize and tinker and bleed you dry as our partner. It's like, hey, we're just trying to optimize. Let's just ask the question. Worst thing is they say no. Yeah. So all of that to be said, I think there are a lot of wins on the P&L if you just spend a little bit of time asking.
Operational excellence. It's the new frontier. In the D2C world, it was all about advertising excellence, creative excellence for so long. Like we're in the age of the operator. I'll link, there was a crazy good tweet from Cody at Jones Row Beauty about like where he's focusing his efforts on the operations side. And I'll link that in the comments if anyone wants to give it a read, but, full support on that. All right. Last thing on the, like bets from last time. So we had some, and I think we see it a little bit in the P&L, is these margin maximizing tests. So we talked about two of them. They are both complete. So I think we can talk about the results of these. Is we were doing some price testing with the rain shirts, so kind of like the hero product. And then we were doing a free shipping threshold test to see where we should actually be setting thresholds to receive that free shipping.
Yeah, I'll talk about, in a chronological order, we started in earnest on the shirt testing because that was in the midst of all the tariffs. And our shirt, control price was 48. We tested 49.99 and 55. Hypotheses being, hey, the first integer in a price is more important than the second, where in a consumer's mind, we thought, hey, there's no real difference between 42 and 49, at least over the years as our prices climbed up. But once you go to 50, there's probably a big drop off. And same with wholesale. It's like, hey, there's something magical to being sub 50. I think the test very much confirmed that. In terms of results, 48 did win technically. And what I love about Intelligems is the platform we used for it. It's like, it calls out conversion rate, revenue per visitor, profit per visitor, AOV. And, you can see it by each metric. All of that to be said, we internally on our team, we said, hey, if there's less than a 5% delta or drop off between control and $49.99, we're going to take that. Especially, a further part of the conversation when we're leaning way too much on existing customer cohort right now. I think more than ever, hopefully, our consumers will be like price sensitive, where hopefully we're onboarding so many new customers over the next 12 months that they don't know that our price was 48. If that was a long-winded way of saying, I think because we're leaning way too much on existing customers right now, they probably were a little more price sensitive than this test.
Yeah. And we saw that when we were talking last quarter, we were talking about that new customer cohort and we were actually down inside of the quarter. So like, hey, It was a lot of returning customers in there. And I think there is great hypothesis. Like, hey, once we cross that 50, is something going to fall off here? And like, hey, the new hypothesis, as you were talking about that, I'm like, we should go back to the drawing board and test this again, where it's like, let's actually target into new customer versus returning customer, and see what the elasticity difference is in that. So I think that's an interesting direction to take that in next.
And I guess the results were, between $49.99, which is an extra $2, versus 48, we were down 2.24% on profit per visitor. But again, I think that was within that acceptable. I know it was within the acceptable band that we had set out with. And it's like, and there is the trickle down effect on wholesale. which isn't captured in this. So all that, and then we had a really strong June. We wanted to launch this before Father's Day, which is our second biggest period of the year. And it's like, hey, we found an extra $2 per order, or whatever the difference in discount is. So that was a big win for us. We were really happy with it. Again, even though technically the test was all in red, it was all 2% difference. I was like, hey, that's better than we thought. The 55, our hypothesis was confirmed, massive drop off. And it was Jeremiah from No Commerce today posted kind of the summary of No Commerce post-purchase results. And it happens that our biggest demographic, which is, or, geographic region, is the Intermountain West, is also the most price sensitive. And our test for sure confirmed that. So anyway, that was shirt testing. We got what we wanted. And then we launched a shipping threshold test. And that one was very interesting. And I didn't realize how interesting it was until you called it out. And now I'm like, man, did we prematurely choose a winner? So I'll let you I'll say the results and you can paint kind of the Sophie's choice or dilemma in a good way, where $100 was always our free shipping threshold test, just because that was standard when we launched in 2017. So we did a $75, $125, $149 versus the $100 control group. And the 75 and 125 were both winners in every category: conversion rate, revenue per visitor, profit per visitor, AOV. The profit per visitor, since that was kind of the star within Intelligems, was up 11% on 125 versus 100. On the 75, profit per visitor was up 7% and some change over the $100, but conversion rate was up close to 7% versus conversion rate being up close to 3.5% on 125. So both were winners in all four metrics. We opted for the 125. Again, I think in a very COVID type environment, I was like, hey, if we can go higher, let's do it. And then you asked the question. I was like, man, maybe we revert to the 75. I don't know. So I'll let you talk about that, because you know it better than I do.
Yeah. So this was like, when I saw the results from this, I immediately messaged Ben. I was like, this is really, really interesting. So what we did there, we call it a straddle test, where it's like, hey, we have the existing control and let's go the same amount up and the same amount down. That usually gives like, hey, if we go a little bit above, a little bit below, we can kind of see what's happening in between. And normally you don't get a great winner on both sides. Now, going with the 125, like Ben was saying, like, hey, profit per visit was higher on that, but conversion rate a little bit higher. If I'm remembering correctly, a little bit higher on the $75 one than it was on the 125. So there's two schools of thought here. We can go to the 125, make more profit per visit that we're getting from the site. That sounds great. But there's also we could go on the $75 one here, because it's still better than the 100. And it has a better conversion. So we could actually introduce that 75 on the hope that we're going to actually attract more customers or new customers that we weren't actually going to be able to convert at the 125. So the game here is like, hey, will the new customers coming in by having that lower threshold that actually are like, yep, that makes sense to me, I'm going to convert, are we going to make that up in, again, returning customers, LTV? Like there's a whole lot of like knock-on effects from this. So the question becomes, is that more valuable than the additional profit bump in the moment right now? So I think this is one we probably want to like continue testing and continue tweaking. But yeah, it was really interesting that we had a winner on both sides. And like, I was kind of torn. You could really do either.
Do you ever implement like an evergreen 75 for new customers versus 125 for returning customers? Or is that just too much friction? I don't know if I've ever seen anyone do that.
We have a few brands that we work with at Intelligems that are really starting to get personalized on like offers across the board. So like whether it's thresholds, and like one of the coolest examples I see of this is like for returning customers. It's tough when you're giving returning customers and new customers like percentage discounts or dollars off, because like it's really easy to be like, we've all been in that situation. Like, why does my cell phone provider give the new
Of course.
customers this
Yep.
like great deal and like, oh, what am I, chopped liver? So when it's able to be easily compared like that, it can create some customer friction. But what we've seen some people do is like for returning customers, we've talked about ties before, is like I will make the threshold something that has higher perceived value to a returning customer, but a lower actual cost to me, the business. So like, hey, I might be getting free shipping. I view that as like $10 off. But for my returning customers, I'll give a free tie, which has a perceived value of $20, but it's actually only $3 of cost to me. But it's not as motivating for a new customer because I haven't experienced the product yet. But if someone who already has, like, that might be a little bit more motivating.
Yeah. And you and I had talked where that is probably the next test, just because it's like, hey, cash back is great for us as a business, but it kind of sucks as a customer. Like, honestly, versus just the discount. And with my favorite brands, I'm wearing Allbirds right now. I've probably got 3 emails. My LTV doesn't look as strong as it is because I want to opt in for that new offer every time. So anyway, just a interesting thought.
My wife's the same way. She's always like, "Did you know that if you put stuff in your cart and then you go away, they always give you a discount?" I was like, "Yep, totally aware."
Well, my wife and I have talked about that, and I'm like, "Hey, best practice." And for the record, this isn't me like saying, "Hey, you can't spend money." Like I want her to buy more. Just please wait 72 hours, and then you're probably going to go from 5 to 10 to 15 to 20% off. Just wait 72 hours. So.
See if you actually want it, and if you do want it, you're going to get a discount. So send it then. Okay, cool. I think that was like a pretty good summary of, hey, some of the bets we were thinking from last quarter and how did they pan out. Let's dig back into this quarter's P&L. So I think like some of the most interesting things inside of here for me is that net sales, similar jump to what we were seeing year over year last quarter, but net income is way up, like way up. There's got to be a story in here, or like you're going to say, Alex, that looks amazing, but actually, I'm sure there's some additional context in here that I'd love to pick your brain on.
Yeah, the main thing is, long story short, April is when our old debt provider, and I can't believe I'm spacing on them now. Maybe I'm just trying to be nice to them. Ampla. Sorry, everybody. Apparently I have trauma, and I'm like trying to forget that part. Yeah, April, they said, hey, we're folding, and we need you to repay your line yesterday. It was $2 million. Again, we were over levered. We've talked way too much about that. Talked about that with your friend Ferris. And so, yeah, we were over levered. We refied in end of May. And so interest was crazy. And that was with Waveflyer. We hadn't moved to KeyBank yet. So this is going to look really good on our next Quarters and Cents podcast too, that interest line, because we refied twice. And Waveflyer is not cheap. Again, it's very accessible debt and for sure serves a purpose. And it saved us, but it's not cheap. So that number was just way inflated last year because we refied, and this year we're with KeyBank at half, actually like a third of the effective interest rate, just because of payback period. And so all that being said, it looks really good, but that's what I started it all off with. Last year was pretty hellish. So this is just us coming out of the inferno and looking really good.
So the inflated net income here is from not as much interest payments, and it's just like the bottom line's looking really good because we don't have that expense anymore.
So EBITDA, which I didn't do this to hyperinflate it. It's just we used net income last time, and I feel like that's the better representation anyway. I've grown after watching the what is it? I don't know what is wrong with my head today. What's the works? Oh, WeWork. After seeing the community adjusted EBITDA numbers, like that's just a joke in my head now. So Mark, the guy who runs our finance, has got me dialed in on net income. He's like, that's real cash. And So we didn't do EBITDA last time, so that's why I didn't do it this time. But EBITDA is much more in line with the gross profit and net sales increase year over year, where the net income is just, I mean, it's powered a little bit by that 30% growth top line, but mostly just by not paying a ton of money to interest.
All right. So makes a ton of sense. And since we talked so much about like the refinancing and the debt payments in the last episode, I think we should move on to something else here. Again, if you want to hear, it is an interesting story. So if you want to hear everything Ben had to say about that, link in the comments to get the Q1 episode. Let's talk about the expense lines here. Advertising and marketing and G&A. So last quarter, advertising and marketing was flat. I think it was like plus 1%, more or less flat over previous year. And G&A was up. Now we're looking at this quarter. We've got advertising and marketing up 15% and G&A down 10%. So what was going on inside of there? Last quarter, we were talking about, hey, I actually want to see the advertising expense go up because I want to be attracting more new customers. So like this is in line with what we were actually hoping to see last quarter.
Yeah. Honest answer, we're still trying to find out why we had such a strong D2C June. And by such a strong, it's all relative. Like we're not throwing down Ridge numbers. But it's like, oh, so April, May, new customer cohorts, when we talked last, were down pretty close to flat, actually, down 5% to flat. We caught mostly up in June, and June spend was down. April, May spend was up pretty significantly. So honestly, our question at the office on Monday was, why was June so strong? It's a weakness of ours, and we talked about it, where it's like, hey, we want to be able to pinpoint and be able to pull more on levers that are working, and we don't know what really worked. So we're wondering, did we just front load? Did we just pull demand forward in June with a really good Father's Day promotion? But it doesn't take into account why June new customer cohorts were up as much as they were. July has started off weak on new customer cohorts, but Amazon is way up. So honestly, we don't know why. And I told you we can't put it to the raindrop video yet. I hope we can soon. Some of our old creative was still winning. So we don't know what is the long story short. I wish I had the answer, and we all do. June was strong. April and May were fine. Most of that growth happened on wholesale in April and May, but June was just a strong D2C month.
And with that plus 15% in marketing expenses, like I'm going to make the assumption that the majority of your marketing expenses are paid ads, Facebook ads, just like every other D2C brand. Inside of the quarter, like when you said, hey, we had a killer June, like was there this plus 15%, was there like a big bump in like the spend early in the quarter, late in the quarter? Was there any sort of correlation between like, hey, we actually started to funnel more back into, because in a previous conversation we said, hey, we're kind of like turning things off, seeing what's working, like, hey, some of this is coming back online. Were we correlating with the spend to the spikes at all?
That's what we're trying to get down, and we've dialed a little bit more in on post-purchase survey, but you can't really stress that all the time. So we are seeing a greater increase of people purchasing with shorter consideration or awareness windows, which is exciting. I mean, that seems like a big part of the puzzle to getting new customers, where it's like, hey, if we can get them to buy after 30 days instead of 12 months, we can maybe get out of this death spiral of shrinking cohorts. I mean, again, we spent more in April and May, but none of those in-platform increases or per North Beam, which is what we use, are what powered June's growth. So we don't know. I mean, we spent more on direct mail. Postpilot's our provider there in May, but technically those campaigns didn't turn out like stunning. They were good. I'm a very big believer in direct mail, by the way. And I think Postpilot is a great partner. I mean, we spent more there. We are, for the first time, seeing Brian, who's our new CMO, just spend by channel and changing, like it's budget reallocation rather than budget growth to find incremental efficiency. So it's like, hey, the biggest change was we spent 80% of meta spend, which was about 80% of total spend, on retargeting, which of course is going to lead to the death spiral. I'm going to keep calling it the death spiral because that's how you go out of business. It's like, that's totally whack. And again, I think agencies did that for reporting, and that's on us. It's like, hey, ROAS looks great. That's because Alex,
Because it's all retargeting.
Alex is seeing his frequency. He's seeing an ad once every 2 days, and he's already purchased from us 6 times, including 3 days ago. It's like, don't send that guy another thing. So totally flipping that, where now 80% of the budget is, so I guess this is the answer. 80% of all budget is supposed to be acquisition, and then 20% is retargeting across all channels. And then we're trying to take away spend from Meta and Google, like branded search. It's like, I think that's a big waste. And that was taking 80% of our Google budget. Again, people know more than I do about this. So this pod, hopefully people aren't listening to hear my marketing takes because they're horrible.
Well, the one interesting thing you said is like, hey, in June, we had like Father's Day is kind of like the second biggest time of the year for AntCaller. Was there anything about the offer this year for Father's Day that you think might have been like more successful?
I mean, we were less aggressive, both in terms of the actual offer. Actually, that's a lie. We were less aggressive on key SKUs, more aggressive on other SKUs. And I think, I mean, AOV was up, so, and more units per transaction or units per cart. So I guess that makes sense. It's like, hey, the Trojan horse is the white shirt. People are going to buy it anyway. So let's do 20% off instead of 25% off. Like, let's get them to buy pants and ties. Because we talked, I think, the last time. There are 2 types of customers: white shirt only customers for us, and then white plus. White plus LTVs are just, I mean, so much better than whites, as intuitive as that sounds. But as soon as we can even get you to buy just one striped tie or floral tie, and let's be real, ASP on that is much different than MSRP because of what you said. It costs us $3 to get it to you when you throw it in with something else. It's like, hey, we just found an extra $11 in profit. But once you buy the extra tie, it's like, oh, your propensity to repeat with us on other items is just so many magnitudes higher than if you only ever get the white. So all that being said, we were less aggressive on white, more aggressive on everything else. And there's a nice little storm to, oh, sorry, I am. We also, Brian's recommendation, our CMO, was let's extend the offer an additional week. And that worked great. So now I'll be quiet.
Maybe there's the answer to the question you were asking on Monday is so like, hey, we were very methodical with what we wanted people to do. It wasn't just like, hey, let's put a 25%, 30% off out there and like try to attract people. It was, hey, we know that Father's Day is game time. We're going to have a lot of returning customers here. There's going to be people who are here for that hero product. How do we maximize those swings? How are we going to get more into the cart? How are we going to structure these offers to do that? Again, focus of this show is like, how do we be efficient with what we're getting there rather than like, hey, did we spend our way into more eyeballs? It was maybe it was as simple as the offer was better tailored for stronger AOV and like we were getting better revenue per visit, profit per visit than maybe previously in previous months.
Yeah. And I think that's also kind of putting wind in our sails to test an offer, with you before Black Friday. Because like, hey, maybe there's something even better. Maybe we could go more aggressive or less aggressive or whatever, or do something. So I think the fact that it's the first time we've ever tinkered a little bit, and it wasn't much, and it drove really good results. It's like, hey, maybe if we actually get scientific about this, it could pay for our next Christmas party.
Ben and I have a few tests and experiments that we're going to be running, but really good call out about, hey, what are we going to do? Like maybe that helped us inform what our Black Friday, Cyber Monday strategy is going to be. We got Labor Day coming. Like there's a few places where we can actually be using offers inside of advertising and kind of like simulate the Black Friday, Cyber Monday experience to try to get a little bit more scientific about this. So if there's ever a time to go try and tinker, it's in kind of like the next 3 months, so that we can figure out what game time is going to look like at
Yep.
once we get to November.
Uh-huh.
Okay. G&A is down 10%. Any kind of like big call, like I know you're big on everything needs ROI, like, hey, we're going to cut things if like we're not seeing that. Any kind of like big cuts to costs?
No, I think now it's just seeing the cuts we made last year, not to harp again on last year, but it's like, hey, our full-time team was 11 or 12 last year, and now we're 6. Yeah. So, I mean, that now we're just seeing the results of that. Not too much else to say, where it's like, hey, we're still paying for company lunches. We're still paying for the same rent. It was just, we reorged the team last year and are now finally able to see a difference in cash.
Simple. Okay. Last thing I think on the P&L, and then let's do what we did last time and make some bets or like, hey, some focus areas going into going into this quarter. So last thing here is gross margins are up compared to last quarter, but the gross profit is similar. So I know we were talking about some of these like margin tests, just wondering like, hey, anything you want to kind of say inside of there, like on the gross margin side versus like actual gross profit?
No, again, I don't think so. Gross margin was up 10%. I mean, we increased the prices. We're starting to see more stuff come from Ethiopia, but I think I called out that, or you said that June was down. So I anticipate that it'll probably end up being about this. Everything will even out and there won't be any real big increases in gross margin, and gross profit will just follow. Excuse me. Gross profit will just follow increase in or decrease in net sales. So no call outs.
All right. So let's look forward. Great review of Q2. We're going into Q3. What's on your mind as we go into Q3? Any like big focus areas for the team, either from like on the P&L level, I'd love to see this, or like, hey, tactically, this is on my mind?
Literally only one thing, and it's new customer cohort. So we've now got a new Monday meeting because like, hey, I think June has to be the start. And I think I told you this last time, or we talked about it, that I firmly believe getting the wheel moving again is much harder than next year, where it's like, oh yeah, I think going from 11 to 14 this year, or 15, which is where we're kind of pacing, is going to be harder than 15 to 25. Maybe that's wrong of me, but it's like, hey, we had 3 years of decreasing year over year customer cohorts. It's like the fact that we've kept growing is a miracle. So it's like, okay, June, I think new customer cohort growth was 10, 11% up over June 24. So it's like, oh, that just has to be the start. Like July should be up 10, 15%. Black Friday's got to be up 30, 40%. And it's got to go that way. And I don't think it has to be exponential. But it's like, oh, you just got to start piling the wins on top of each other. So all of that said, we're pretty close to optimized as much as possible. Like we can't shed that much more fat on the P&L, on the G&A that you're talking about. It's like, I guess technically there's a 50 grand more to find there. Maybe there's 100 grand more to find on like freight optimization by using Amazon shipping instead of UPS and FedEx, which we're already doing. But it all comes now down to one single thing, which is new customer cohort growth. And so every Monday, it's like, hey, this is the number to which Brian is accountable. How is it pacing year over year? And we're doing year over year instead of like week over week or month over month, just because of the seasonality. And I think that's a much better illustration than month over month. So all that to be said, yeah, we've only got one thing that's top of mind, and that's new customer cohort growth.
All right, 2 follow-up questions on that. So one, like we can answer these in whatever order. One, anything you're thinking in terms of like, hey, how do we bring that to life? Like if that's the number one thing to go move, what's kind of on your mind to actually go change that? And then follow-up question to that is there any worry about, hey, we've been really efficient for the last little bit. There's been a lot of things that have forced us into more efficiency, more focus on like profitability. Any worry about that as we like kind of go full force on we need more new customers?
No real worry. You look at the P&L and it's like, it's a pretty awesome quarter two. Bottom line, year over year looked good, but like just absolute bottom line looked pretty good relative to what it's always been for us. So it's like, we have the money to do things, but we've also been in a state before where we've just thrown money out the window. So my only worry regarding, optimizations and new customer cohort growth is it's like, okay, are we actually acquiring new customers with an increase in spend, or are we just increasing spend and new customer cohort growth is about the same? Because then, again, that just leads back to square one.
So with like trying to find ways to do this, so I think you hit on this a little, like on one of the tactics already is like, hey, we're flipping our ad spend. We want 80% of this to be outside of retargeting, 20% on on retargeting and like existing customers. Anything kind of like on the docket to go chase down that like a higher percentage of new customers going into Q3?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, shifting spend to get the first incremental ROI where it's like, hey, rather than spending an extra $5,000 a day on Meta, can we go spend $5,000 a day on post-pilot and billboards here in Utah where everyone has white shirts, or, or movie theaters, or going to Tatari and doing TV for impressions and news site traffic. So I think more so than anything, reallocating budget before growing budget is kind of our mantra. It's like, hey, let's go test. We're also working on, for the first time, micro segments for the first time. So it's like, hey, let's go spend $15,000 against segments, have to wear dress shirts and are price sensitive. So they're going to come to us instead of Mizzen and Main. It's like, oh, what about hotel workers or auto dealers or waiters and waitresses? We go seed 100, seed product to 100 to 200 influencers and set demo, get content from 10% of them, whitelist those as meta ads or whatever. If there's signs of life, let's go chase that segment, try to make it $1 million business on its own, spending 100 to 200 grand on it. And it's like, that's its own little P&L. So we're trying to, our teachers, like public school teachers, they've got to wear dress shirts every day. There's not that many groups that have to wear dress shirts every day. Investment bankers, as much as I love Liquidity, the meme account, it's like those guys aren't going to spend $50 on a shirt. They're not going to fit in. But a teacher at Columbus High, all day, please, let's go. So going to try to do stuff there, and I'll ping you about other things. It's like, oh, how do you personalize? How do you do offers? It's like, hey, here's your teacher bundle for 5 shirts to get you through Monday through Friday. And test to see if we can do interesting things. So that's a long-winded way of saying, hey, if the Mark Cuban thing is where he's like, hey, if you own 0.05% of all dress shirts, we're going to be a $50 million business. It's like, okay. Or if we own 20% of all teachers, public school teachers, which isn't that male public school teachers, you kind of get there the same way. So
I like this approach more. There's a book that I love. It's called Ramping Your Brand. And basically the whole thesis of it is exactly what you just said. It's tempting to say, oh, if I get this percentage of the entire market, I'll be great. But like, that's really hard to do. But what if you can go get 10% of a specific market? So I think what you're like, so let me say it back to you. Like basically what you're going to try to do is, hey, let's hyper segment. Let's get specific into like who could be a user of the product. Let's run some ads into however specific we can get to try to target in there, see if there's signal in any of these, and then go try to like build plans specific to those different user categories. Cause like, I'm getting excited about you doing that because like you go the teacher route and it's like, okay, like now we can start to do like things around school. Like you can kind of break away from just meta advertising and like use a post pilot or direct mail or do in-person activations and like find ways to allocate those funds that isn't just like direct response meta ads.
Yeah. Because we've spent a lot against it and it's not working, or we're not making it work. And again, hopefully it becomes this halo effect where it's like, oh, you get signal in the teachers, that grows on its own, and somehow meta becomes more efficient. Or not just hoping, but it's like, oh, as you start to snowball. So I'll let you know how that one goes. Honestly, I'll probably work with you on it, because that thought as well is like, oh, let's do personalizations and let's do landers. Because again, we're talking recurring and required segments. If they check both those boxes, they have to wear a dress shirt. And again, we're not going after guys like you, respectfully, because you wear cool t-shirts and you don't have to wear it to work. It's like, okay, Meta's not, it's going to cost $400 to get you to buy a t-shirt on Meta, or excuse me, a dress shirt on Meta to wear to your cousin's wedding once. Like, You're not the guy. Mr. Smith, who teaches teaches 180 days a year and wears a dress shirt every day. That guy, he's got good LTV opportunities. He probably likes the functionality. So I'll probably jam with you on that one. But the way you worded it was much better. Spend, get some signal. I think get authentic content. That's why you use influencers as the, again, I hate how much I'm saying this, the Trojan horse. It's like, hey, we'll be so authentically teacher. There's no teacher bone in my body, but it's like, we're going to curate a really personalized teacher experience for you. And we are going to onboard so many teachers this year. And who knows, maybe they have like a group me for all of the teachers in America. And then you just go spend on there or whatever. So
yeah, we'll work on this. And then when we come back for the Q3 pod, talk a bit about it, because actually Ben's going to hear about this for the first time. We got some new features coming in Intelligems to basically build personalized offers inside of the platform.
Cool.
So this is actually going to become a lot easier to do. And I need to work with someone to like, hey, how can we kind of get as many of these different offers together? Because we're going to find signal that they are willing to buy. But hey, we've talked for 2 podcasts now about, hey, how do we create these experiences and get efficient and get profitable? Is, hey, we know we want to target these. There's something here. Let's get them to the site. And now what are we going to do to make sure, again, our profit per visit is good, AOV is looking good, and that like this new customer cohort increasing doesn't come with like, oh, those are really, really expensive to get. I think they're always going to be at the start, but like, hey, how can we start to make that more efficient over time?
Yeah.
All right. Well, this was a fantastic jam on this. And again, we'll come back next quarter with a new P&L, review some of those, and jam again in 90 days.
Okay. I'll be on time next time. Appreciate you, Alex.